GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
More and more people are now tuning in to GB News.
They shape our programmes. We try and incorporate them in our shows as much as we can.
Our audience are really interactive.
Our listeners, our viewers, they're growing.
And that's because they tell their friends and family about what we're doing here at GB News.
It feels like the depth of that connection has strengthened as well.
Thank you so much for speaking to us on GB News.
Come and say hello to everybody that's here from GB News.
It's been an exceptional event.
We've come a long way here now.
What's so unique about GB News viewers is that they really, really love our country.
And they talk about us so proudly. We're on a journey together.
We are here for all of Britain. We believe in this country, we believe in its people, and we believe in all of the communities who live here.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Morning, 9:30 on Wednesday the 13th of May, live across the UK. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, there's been a streeting showdown this morning. Leadership hopeful Wes Streeting had a 15-minute talk with the Prime Minister at number 10 Downing Street.
Yes, drama on Downing Street. The Health Secretary strode into number 10 with a look of steely determination for a surprisingly brief meeting with the Prime Minister.
And a make-or-break speech today, the King will set out the government's legislative agenda for the year ahead with big promises on immigration, health and green energy.
Let's just step back, take a breath. Let's remember that we have the King's speech. We are in government to do a job of work.
But is Sir Keir in the clear? More than 100 MPs stand by Sir Keir Starmer, but the number calling for him to go continues to grow.
And that man, Andy Burnham's been rallying his allies. The Greater Manchester Mayor hosted a summit in London. He's still got his eyes on the top job. Problem is, he hasn't got a common seat.
Well, another turbulent day in British politics, Andrew, with the added addition of the King's speech, which of course is an incredibly important ceremonial occasion, but it's taking a background role because of all the political turmoil.
And who'd have thought it, Buckingham Palace actually got in touch with number 10 to say, should it go ahead? Because of the turbulence.
Yeah, and it makes the King look like he's fulfilling a political role, which he doesn't want to.
No.
But also it throws into question the government's whole legislative agenda, because if the Prime Minister changes next week, well, we need another King's speech at some point to set out a new load of bills.
Well, as ever, we'd like to know what you think, hear what you think. Send your views, post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top story: Sir Keir Starmer has met with the Health Secretary Wes Streeting at Downing Street this morning. Mr Streeting is seen as a likely leadership rival. 4 ministers resigned yesterday and called for Sir Keir Starmer to step down, joining more than 80 Labour MPs who are urging the Prime Minister to quit immediately or draw up a timetable to leave. Meanwhile, King Charles will unveil the government's agenda for the year ahead this morning as Sir Keir Starmer fights for his future in Downing Street. The King's speech is expected to include more than 35 bills and draft bills, including on immigration, the NHS and police reforms, along with a route to potentially nationalising British Steel. And that says the Princess of Wales will step back onto the international stage today with a trip to the Italian city of Reggio Emilia in a personal landmark in her recovery from cancer. An aide to the Princess says undoubtedly this is a huge moment for the Princess. And those are the latest headlines. More in half an hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We are live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and me, Miriam Cates.
Well, he's been into number 10. He had a private talk with the Prime Minister. We're talking about Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. He was in there for about 15 minutes and we're pretty sure no statement will be made by Streeting before the King's speech. Tomorrow he'll be doing the latest health waiting lists. But will what happened with him and Starmer not leak?
Absolutely. There are a lot of people in that building, a lot of people's jobs and interests riding on the outcome of that meeting. But we, as yet, have no idea what was said. And you would imagine, out of respect for the King and the processes of Parliament, nothing more will be said today. But it's leaving us all on tenterhooks.
It certainly is. I wonder if Wes Streeting has got the magical 81 names he needs to trigger the challenge.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he does have the 81 names. But if you read some of the Labour press today, particularly New Statesman and other journals like that, he also has a lot of enemies in Parliament who do not want him as a supposed right-winger to win. And so it's one thing having the numbers to make a challenge, but to win and then to be able to govern is a completely different matter.
And that's Wes Streeting leaving earlier. Unusually for Wes Streeting, nothing to say to the press. And as I pointed out in the Mail, normally he'd go to the opening of an envelope if he thought it was a TV camera there. But he's being unusually reticent and tongue-tied.
Interesting intervention from the unions today, reported in The Guardian. Well, I suppose it's an unintentional intervention because it was a leak of a letter from the major unions, which, of course, are a big part of support for Labour, especially financially, also agreeing that Starmer will have to go before the next election. I mean, that's another way to turn the screw, I suppose, for funding to be denied, depending on the leadership. But I think it's all going to come to a head in the next 48 hours, Andrew.
I'm pretty sure it will, yeah. We're going to go to GB News presenter Ellie Costello, who is in Downing Street in the thick of the battle. Ellie.
Yes, good morning, Miriam and Andrew. Drama on Downing Street this morning. We had a very confident, very determined-looking Wes Streeting, who chose to come through the front door this morning for that showdown with the Prime Minister. Bearing in mind, he did have a choice. He could have gone through the back door, he could have gone through the side door and avoided the press and the scrutiny out front. But he decided to have his ministerial car drop him near the gates of Downing Street and took that long walk up to the black door behind me. It is worth noting that he looked over at the press with a wry smile on his way into Downing Street, and as he was leaving, he did look to be a man on a mission. And as you were saying, Andrew, a very brief meeting indeed, lasting about 16 minutes, and we can gather from that Wes Streeting probably went in, he was probably waiting outside the Prime Minister's office before he was even invited in, so that really does cut down on the time that the pair were actually speaking. And I think we can take from that, can't we, the hunch might be that it wasn't a cuddly make-up kind of meeting, and instead it would have been a very frank discussion. Did Wes Streeting say something potentially the Prime Minister does not want to hear? Did he say that he's got that 81 backers, that crucial number that he would need in order to launch a leadership challenge? Did he say that he'd resign as Health Secretary? We just don't know. But as you were saying there, Andrew, number 10 is a leaky place. We may very soon find out. Wes Streeting unlikely to give us any indicator of what happened in that meeting today. He will be respectful of the King's speech, which is set to take place in, can you believe, 2 hours' time. Nobody can fathom the timing of all of this. It's meant to be a day of pomp and pageantry, focusing on the opening, the state opening of Parliament. Instead, we're talking about infighting and cabinet turmoil. The focus is on the Prime Minister and Wes Streeting. So will Wes Streeting announce what was said in that meeting perhaps tonight? If he's going to go over the top, if he's going to launch a leadership bid, could it be tomorrow? Let's bring in Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood. Tom, what do you speculate happened in that very brief meeting between those two men this morning?
I think that your intimation there is likely bang on. I don't know many meetings of sort of kiss and make up or of smoothing over differences, coming to some sort of common understanding that are done in a handful of minutes. This seemed like a curt and frank exchange of views, and also something that we should note. If this was a peace talk, wouldn't it have been in the interests of number 10 to have briefed out what was said in that meeting? The fact that neither side has so far briefed out what was said in that meeting, the fact that it hasn't yet leaked, despite Downing Street being a notoriously leaky place, well, that perhaps suggests that both men did not have the smoothest of conversations, that it was more of a confrontation than a conversation. And of course we saw that in the determination in Wes Streeting's face, making that decision, as you say, to do the long walk. Yesterday, when Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, turned up on Downing Street, her car drove right the way from the gates down at the end all the way up to number 11, so she barely had to move at all. She just had a couple of steps to go straight in the door to avoid the press. Wes Streeting did not want to avoid the shouts of the press today. He wanted to project an image of confidence. He wanted to project an image of a man who has not bottled it.
Yeah, well, he was successful in that, wasn't he, Tom? Thank you very much indeed. Well, Andrew and Miriam, this comes off the back of news this morning that 11 unions affiliated with the Labour Party have released this letter, damning letter, it must be said, essentially saying that they don't believe this Prime Minister can lead the Labour Party into the next general election. This is a huge blow for the already embattled Prime Minister.
Ellie, thank you very much for that report from 10 Downing Street. Well, we're joined now in the studio by Connor Naismith, who is a Labour MP for Crewe and Nantwich. Connor, good morning. I mean, first of all, commiserations. I remember going through all this when I was in Parliament, and it's not fun, is it?
No, look, I think it's really important that you've said that, actually, because every single one of us who's involved in this current debate hates it. Those of us who are calling for the Prime Minister to go do not do so lightly. I've been a loyal backbencher. I've supported the government and I've supported the Prime Minister up to this point, but it just becomes clear at some point that the man has lost the confidence of the country, and we have a limited time to effect change in this Parliament, and we've got to act, is the conclusion that I and others have reached.
Are people like you, Connor, acting because you're worried you're going to lose your seat, or because you think a new leader will make a proper difference to the country?
No.
Or is it a bit of both?
It's absolutely not about my seat
or
any individual seat, no. I think it is, one, that we all came into government on a mandate of change, and we believe in that. We believe that the country needs change, that people were crying out for it. That's what they voted for. And that, unfortunately, I don't think that this Prime Minister is able to deliver that change now. But secondly, it's also about the fear of what is coming down the track if we don't deliver on that mandate, that people will turn to more extreme options that I think will be damaging for the country.
Do you mean reform?
And I think that that's what every Labour person has to look themselves in the mirror and say, can this Prime Minister fend off that threat? And the conclusion I've reached is that this one cannot do that.
What do you think is that mandate? How would you describe it in kind of 3 or 4 key policies?
Well, I think one of the things that was most effective and that resonated with people was the sense that nothing works anymore. So public services don't work. People have that sense that if a crime's committed in their community, nothing will happen about it. So it's law and order, it's public services, and it is a sense that the system once again works for the average person on the street.
But nobody doesn't want that. That isn't a kind of key plank of Keir Starmer's offer, as it wouldn't be for Wes Streeting or Andy Burnham. That's about competent government. Everybody wants that.
Yep.
Why would changing Keir Starmer change the government's ability to get those things done or not?
I think it's not a case of saying that this, the first 18 months have not delivered some change, but I think fundamentally at the heart of this administration there is a timidity. There is a sense that, we heard in the speech on Monday, we heard the Prime Minister say we're going to nationalise British Steel subject to a public interest
I quite
test.
agree. We raised that yesterday.
It is proceduralism.
Yeah.
Even now, when we're talking about a change of leadership, the defence that is relied on is that the threshold has not been met, according to the Labour Party rulebook. The public out there don't want to hear about the process. They want to hear that the government understands the urgency of the situation that they feel in their communities and has a plan to deliver on it quickly.
So you know these people in Parliament. Who is the candidate you see who could do the job that Starmer's not doing?
Well, what I'm asking for is that we don't rush this, that we don't rush into a kind of chaotic situation where we might end up with an outcome just because we didn't take the time over it. So I'm asking the Prime Minister to recognise that it's over. It is over. To set out a timetable for his departure, and that we allow the party then, so we give the country that short-term stability, we've got the Prime Minister in place for a period, whatever it is, and we allow the party to have a proper debate about what the future is.
And crucially, to give Andy Burnham time to return to the Houses of Parliament.
We cannot and we should not confine ourselves to the options of who is in the Parliamentary Labour Party right now.
Well, it would be an extraordinary departure from tradition and normality to say that, isn't it? Because in what other leadership election do you say, well, hang on a minute, we're not just going to look at the several hundred MPs that we've got. Let's look around the country and see who else might want to join in. It's quite a strange thing to think.
No, I would accept that it is a departure from the way things have been done in the past, but we have never had the system of mayors that we have right now, and mayors across the country are delivering things.
What does it say of the quality of the 403 Labour MPs that there isn't one there that you think can do that job? You've got to go and get Andy Burnham out of his mayoral area in Manchester to do the job. What does it say about the other 400 MPs?
I am not for one moment saying there isn't anybody within the current crop of Labour MPs, but what I'm saying is we've got Andy Burnham there who has demonstrated a desire to re-enter politics at the national level. He should be allowed to do that, and he should be allowed to make his case. If we decide to go with somebody else, then so be it. You know, if the Parliamentary Labour Party and the members decide to go with somebody else, but Andy should be allowed to make his case.
But isn't he then breaking a pretty important commitment to the people of Greater Manchester that he would serve as their mayor for 4 years?
Look, you know, there's no denying that Andy chose to stand for the Greater Manchester mayoralty, but clearly he has reached the conclusion, and I think many, many others who support what he's trying to do have reached the conclusion that we're in an urgent moment and that we need our best players on the pitch. We need people like Andy at the front line of our politics, and we cannot see the Labour Party kind of block him again for spurious reasons, in my view.
Do you think that, and I'm sure you won't want anybody in the Labour Party would want to hear this, that you've actually become just like the last Conservative Party, which is that it's not
They were a rabble.
It's not really about the leader.
They were a rabble.
I think most people would accept that Keir Starmer is not a gifted Prime Minister. That is absolutely true. It's not really about the leader. It's about the fact that the party is split, and genuinely split, not on kind of factional lines or personalities, but about how they genuinely feel the best route for the country. So just a reminder of, the last government, the Conservative Party was genuinely split between people who wanted to get back to a national conservatism, low immigration, kind of pro-family, and people who were essentially internationalists. And you have exactly the same split, which will make it difficult for anybody coming in to change anything.
National political parties naturally have different tribes within them. We are coalitions. The Conservative Party is the same, the Labour Party is the same. But I know, fundamentally, that there is so much... that there is a shared programme that we could all get behind in the Labour Party. Sometimes it's presented as if we're all at each other's throats. But actually, what we've seen in the last few days is a consensus form that Starmer, across the different groups, that Starmer is not the person to take us forward, and a desire to have a debate and a discussion about what can unite us going into the future. And actually, ironically, I think that Andy would have a lot to say in that regard as well. I think he can speak to different parts of the movement. And that's partly why I think he'd be quite effective.
Really fascinating.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on. I know it's not an easy time. We really appreciate you coming into the studio.
All right, now we've got some breaking news coming to Sussex. Police have said the bodies of 3 women were recovered from the sea in Brighton early today.
Well, Chief Superintendent Adam Hayes says this is a tragic incident and fast-moving inquiries are ongoing to confirm the identities of these 3 women and understand exactly what has happened.
That's very bleak, isn't it?
Very.
Now, still ahead, another runner and rider for the top job in Downing Street is the Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, who most people won't have heard of because he's only been an MP for 5 minutes. We'll have the latest on him.
But up next, it's all eyes on Westminster this morning, as soon the King will be heading into Parliament to outline the government's agenda for the year ahead, or the week at least.
Yeah. But first, you want some of that elusive holiday sun? Here's the forecast.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations forecast.
It remains fairly cloudy over southern Italy with a few showers here, quite cloudy too in Barcelona, but plenty of sunshine for Ibiza and southern Spain as well. 1 or 2 showers possibly feeding down on a cool northerly breeze to the Canaries, certainly showers likely in Madeira. Southern Spain, southern Portugal dry and sunny, northern Italy also seeing some sunshine, but there's that cloud with some outbreaks of rain. The odd shower over mainland Greece, but most of the Greek islands dry and sunny. Some showers may crop up in Santorini on Saturday.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations forecast.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're here at Lucky Hedgehog Rescue in Grimston in East Yorkshire for Hedgehog Awareness Week this week, and we're joined now by the founder, Lucy, of the charity. Lucy, hello. You're just about to take Ben out here. You've got 43 sick and injured hedgehogs here at the moment. Just tell us what's wrong with Ben.
Ben had a broken leg, and it was a nasty fracture, and our lovely vets at Barton Veterinary Centre in the Humber have amputated the leg. It's a hind leg, and he's thriving really, really well, but we have to take them case by case. But I'm just going to check on him again and weigh him while you're here, so we don't unnecessarily disturb him. But this is what we have to do every day anyway, so we've saved him for you.
Thank you. So I'll just let you take Ben out now. You've been going for 13 years now. This is sort of part of your home, is the Hedgehog Rescue. Slowly and slowly you've been expanding to look after one of the nation's favourite, or beautiful Ben there, the hedgehog. Obviously this week is all about raising awareness for hedgehogs. What are tips that people can follow to look after hedgehogs that they may see in their gardens and around?
Well, the main injuries we get in are caused by dog attacks and strimmers. We've lost thousands to them. So if people can be aware of their dogs at night or at dusk, keep them on a lead or be with them in the garden so that they don't attack hedgehogs. Strimmers, learn to use them properly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB Newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 9 minutes to 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Some of you with a long memory, I'm just checking my phone switched off.
Good.
Some of you with a long memory remember back in 1995, the Tory party got itself into all sorts of convulsions when John Major effectively said, put up or shut up. John Redwood resigned as Welsh Secretary and challenged John Major for the Conservative Party leadership. He's now Lord Redwood and joins us now. Lord Redwood, good morning to you. Do you see parallels with what happened with you and the Tory party in 95 and what's happening with Labour today?
Yes, I do see parallels. I mean, I think John Major had adopted a dreadful economic policy by being too European and joining their currency scheme, which gave us boom and bust and landed us in a very nasty recession. I'd been a permanent opponent of that from within the government. And so when he said, put up or shut up, I felt duty bound to make my entirely private disagreements with the policy public. But at the same time, the two Michaels, Michael Heseltine and Michael Portillo, had been much rumoured for many months in the press that they wanted to be leader and they were going to issue challenges. And so John Major did actually deal with that because he asked them to put up and they wouldn't. I don't know why, but it was left to me to make the case against the government's economic policy. And so in one sense, the Prime Minister had a happy outcome. In another sense, it was ruinous for the Conservative Party and not very good for the country, because, of course, we went on to a catastrophic defeat. And my slogan was no change, no chance. And the slogan didn't succeed in giving me victory, but I think it was certainly vindicated by the eventual outcome when the Tories went down to a catastrophic defeat.
Do you think something similar may happen to Wes Streeting? He may put himself forward in the next 48 hours, but if no other candidates emerge and the Prime Minister were to choose to stand against him and win, we'd probably see exactly the same thing. No change before the next general election and, according to the polls, another catastrophic defeat.
Yes, well, that's why it's a real tragedy for the country. And I don't know what advice you would give Labour if you wanted Labour to find a way through it. Because as you rightly say, if they stick with Starmer, it looks dreadful. No change, no chance. And if they don't stick with Starmer, they might end up with the wrong answer. Or, as you say, they may even allow Starmer to win the vote, but he won't win the argument, and the country will limp on. And then maybe in a year's time, somebody else will have to mount a challenge. They'll have to actually get the 81 numbers they need of MPs and then mount a serious challenge. And I would advise them to have a better slogan than no change, no chance, because clearly that one didn't win.
Yeah. It is extraordinary, isn't it, Lord Redwood? When this lot got into power, one of the clarion calls of Keir Starmer was an end to the chaos of the Boris years, the Rishi years, Liz Truss. We're seeing even more chaos, I would argue, now, with a Prime Minister who's desperate to cling on when he's already lost a quarter of his parliamentary party. Ministers are resigning, albeit no cabinet ministers yet. But the chaos is at least on a scale with what we witnessed under the demise of Boris.
Well, I think it's worse, because I think in every policy area where they inherited things that weren't working very well, they've made them worse. And in some policy areas that were working very well, they've damaged or undermined them. I mean, they inherited an economy which had been the fastest growing in the G7 for the 6 months before Conservatives left office, after a very indifferent record prior to that. And they wrecked that with high taxes and more business regulation. And they took on a really good improving educational system thanks to the academy rollout, a cross-party initiative started by Blair that Tories did very well with, massive improvements in standards of literacy and numeracy, and they're busily undermining that. And they inherited a totally unsatisfactory situation on small boats and said they knew how to smash the gangs. And they instead watered down the laws that the Tories had finally put in that were beginning to have some impact. And they've made that problem worse. So I think pity the poor country that in the last days of Sunak, quite a lot of things were actually improving, but people didn't forgive the Tories for the big mistake over immigration. In the last days of Starmer, or maybe not the last days of Starmer, we see everything deteriorating and much of it getting worse because of actions this government has taken rather than the so-called inheritance.
Lord Redwood, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much. We really appreciate your contribution this morning.
I remember covering that leadership contest when I first got to know
You
John
wrote about
Redwood.
it today.
I did.
Well, still ahead, find out more about Zach Polanski. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M6 southbound near Coventry, a collision causes 40-minute delays, expected to clear shortly after 10:25. In Greater London, the M4 eastbound crash closes 2 lanes, causing over 1.5 hours of delay, with normal flow by 11:30. The A9 northbound near Auchterarder and A 66 eastbound near Stockton-on-Tees each have a blocked lane due to broken down vehicles. The A38 westbound in Devon has 40-minute delays from an overturned vehicle, and on the trains there is disruption on Northern between Hebden Bridge and Halifax. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
£76,543 and 21 pence in tax-free cash could be yours this summer. That's totally tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. And remember, because it's totally tax-free cash, you'll get to keep every single penny. For a chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Wednesday the 13th of May. We are live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Streeting showdown this morning. Leadership hopeful Wes Streeting was in number 10 for 17 minutes, or was it 15 minutes with the Prime Minister? We know what they were talking about, but so far it's not leaked.
Well, Wes Streeting was marching up and down Downing Street with a brief time inside. All indications are that short conversation meant that it wasn't one of pleasantries. Indeed, was probably one of curt disagreement.
And a make-or-break speech. Today, the King will set out the government's agenda for the year ahead with big promises on immigration, health and green energy.
Let's just step back, take a breath. Let's remember that we have the King's speech. We are in government to do a job of work.
So is Sir Keir in the clear? More than 100 MPs have signed a letter backing Sir Keir Starmer, but the amount calling for him to go continues to grow.
Well, Burnham is rallying his allies too. The Greater Manchester Mayor hosted a secret summit in London yesterday as he eyes the top job.
I imagine the King is pretty bewildered by this. I mean, he's not done many of these because he's only been the monarch for a few years. But with this extraordinary backdrop, he's going to say, my government will, my government will, my government will. 35 bills, knowing that the Prime Minister would be just a few feet away from him in the House of Lords as he makes that speech, could be turfed out in his ear.
Starting 2 weeks ago, he was sent to the United States to try and patch things up with Trump.
And he did brilliantly.
He did brilliantly. Absolutely. And now he's being used as a kind of staged execution for Keir Starmer. He's definitely got a political role at the moment, whether he likes it or not.
And of course, we don't know what's happened between the Prime Minister and the Wes Streeting, but I imagine if Wes Streeting said he was minded to resign and challenge, the Prime Minister said, fine, I'll fight you. Because I think if there was a leadership contest between the two of them, people tell me Sir Keir Starmer would win. And that's the end of career for Wes Streeting, age 43.
Of course, he could have gone in there and said, I've decided not to run, I'll continue to support you. But if he had said that, I would have thought it would have been briefed out by one side or the other. So we are still none the wiser. Will we find out today? Will we leave it till tomorrow because of the King's speech?
And he will be conscious of the historical parallels with John Redwood back in 1995. We were just talking to Lord Redwood, who did challenge John Major in 1995. Michael Portillo even arranged for phone lines in a house in Lord North Street, but he blew it, and everyone thought that was his best chance to be Conservative Party leader.
And the same with Michael Heseltine, possibly his last chance. Well, hopefully Wes Streeting will be reading up on his Conservative Party history. Well, we'll let you know what happens out as we hear it. Do send your views and comments too.
Send them to gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top story, Sir Keir Starmer has met with the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who's seen as a likely leadership rival. The crunch meeting in Number 10 this morning came before the King's speech today, in which King Charles will set out the government's planned new laws for the next parliamentary session. 4 ministers resigned yesterday and called for Sir Keir Starmer to step down, joining more than 80 Labour MPs who were urging the Prime Minister to quit immediately or draw up a timetable to leave. Meanwhile, more than 100 Labour MPs signed a statement backing the Prime Minister, saying this is no time for a leadership contest. Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy says no one seems to have the names to stand up against Starmer and tells his colleagues to take a breath. Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Alex Burghardt, spoke to GB News Breakfast.
Prime Ministers can only stay for as long as their authority holds up. Yeah, and the case of Keir Starmer, his authority is clearly gone. You can't have somebody who's in office but not in power. And he's blown it. He won this big election 2 years ago, and everything that he's done has been a disaster. And it's been the job of the Conservative Party, as His Majesty's official opposition, to point out all of his disastrous policies, taxing farms, taxing schools, increasing welfare spending, and so on and so on and so on.
Well, King Charles will unveil the government's agenda for the year ahead this morning as Sir Keir Starmer fights for his future in Downing Street. Labour's ongoing divisions mean the day of pomp and ceremony for the state opening of Parliament will take place in unusual circumstances. The King's speech is expected to include more than 35 bills and draft bills, including on immigration, the NHS and police reforms, along with a route to potentially nationalising British Steel. It's despite splits amongst Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet and backbench MPs following heavy losses in last week's elections. Sir Keir Starmer said people expected the government to get on with the job of changing our country for the better. Meanwhile, the Princess of Wales will step back onto the international stage today with a trip to the Italian city of Reggio Emilia in a personal landmark in her recovery from cancer. An aide to the Princess says undoubtedly this is a huge moment for the Princess. There will be many highlights of 2026, but this being her first official international visit post her recovery, this is a really significant moment for her. It's more than 3 years since Princess Catherine's last official visit overseas. The focus of her return trip is her early years education campaign. Her trip to the Italian city could be the first in a series of international trips to places which have developed their own approaches to helping children in their early years. Breaking news this hour, the bodies of 3 women have been recovered from the sea off Brighton, police have said. Emergency services were called after concerns were raised for the women's welfare at around 5:45 a.m. today, and their bodies were pulled from the water near Madeira Drive. Chief Superintendent Adam Hayes from Sussex Police said this is a tragic incident and fast-moving inquiries are ongoing to confirm the identities of these 3 women and understand exactly what has happened. Elsewhere, 22 people evacuated from a cruise ship after a hantavirus outbreak are set to start leaving a Liverpool hospital where they've been isolating since returning to the UK. The passengers and crew who were on board the MV Hondius will have spent 72 hours isolating at Arrow Park Hospital in Merseyside and will be expected to isolate for another 42 days at home. They include 20 British nationals, a German national who is a UK resident and a Japanese passenger. 10 other passengers and crew members are being brought to the UK from British territories in the South Atlantic, St Helena and Ascension Islands as a precaution. The 10 people are being moved because the NHS in England was well equipped to respond if they became unwell. That's according to the UKHSA. And former NBA star Jason Collins, the first openly gay player in a major US professional sports league, has died at the age of 47. It comes after he revealed he had stage 4 glioblastoma, an aggressive form of brain cancer. He first disclosed his treatment for the disease in September. Collins made history in 2014 when he made his debut for the Brooklyn Nets, having become the first male athlete in America's top professional sports leagues to come out as gay. He was a 12-year veteran of the NBA at the time. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, we're just hours, barely an hour away now from the King's speech. The King will be setting off from Buckingham Palace shortly for Parliament, but all against the backdrop of this extraordinary leadership crisis which has engulfed the Labour government. We're going to talk to our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who is in Downing Street. Tom.
Yes, Andrew, this has been a dramatic morning on Downing Street. A rather surprisingly brief conversation was had in that building behind me between the Health Secretary and the Prime Minister, we're given to understand. The Health Secretary turned up and strode down the street with this sort of determination on his face, and frankly, he chose to walk the length of the street rather than have his car drop him rather closer to the door. That meant that for the entire walk, he was in the view of the cameras and the glare of the journalists here outside. We shouted questions at him, but response we got none. Instead, a quick smile was glanced at us before the Health Secretary entered that black door. But the most interesting thing about this is that it was only 17 minutes later that the Health Secretary then left the building again. Just the most remarkably quick trip inside. We can only guess what was said, what was exchanged between the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary in terms of what was said in that meeting. And yet, thinking about how meetings can go, thinking about what sort of meeting might have been a longer one, what sort of meeting might have been a shorter one. The fact that the Health Secretary was inside the building for only 17 minutes, will have met the Prime Minister for a fraction of that, well, it doesn't sound like it was a kiss and make up session. It doesn't sound like it was an idea of reconciliation. It doesn't sound like common ground was found after just such a short period of time. If I was to bet what went on in that building, that would indeed have been a much more curt exchange of views, a much more frank exchange of views. Now, it's interesting that we haven't heard any briefing from Number 10 from what went on in that meeting. Indeed, it is they're keeping a lid on what was said in the building behind me. But, of course, that's because, likely, the King's speech is dominating proceedings today. The Prime Minister, nor Wes Streeting, no one involved in any of the proceedings wants to embarrass the King or overshadow the state opening. And that's likely why we're not going to hear anything from the Health Secretary until maybe this evening or tomorrow morning. I think that it's likely we will hear something from the Health Secretary tomorrow morning when, as a long-scheduled and well-prepared set of statistics is due to come out tomorrow morning with regard to health data, waiting list times, all of these sorts of things. That would be an opportune moment for the Health Secretary to say something about his role as Health Secretary, but perhaps also something about his position in this government and view on whether or not the Prime Minister should go. Perhaps then we will learn what was said in the building behind me just some minutes ago.
Tom, we're also hearing from the SNP that they are going to force a vote on the Prime Minister's future in an amendment to the King's speech. There will be that debate this afternoon. Are you hearing any more from the Scots Nats?
Yeah, this is something that the Scottish Nationalist Party will do to embarrass the government, quite frankly. It is overwhelmingly unlikely that any large number of Labour MPs at all would vote against their own government, would vote no confidence in the government, would vote against the King's speech. That's seen to be a confidence motion if you're to vote against the King's speech, and it would mean surely that any SNP MP, any Labour MP who voted with the SNP on that would lose the whip and therefore lose their important role in any future leadership contest. Of course, if you have the whip withdrawn from you as a Labour MP, you can no longer nominate individuals to become the next leader of your party, if indeed a contest were to take place. I have to say there is some movement on Downing Street now. The pack of photographers next to me are bristling and preparing. It does seem like we're going to get the Prime Minister leaving Downing Street any moment now. Now, this isn't to make a statement or anything. This is just to travel to the House of Commons in order to attend the state opening and fulfil his duties as Prime Minister within the state opening. So if we do see the Prime Minister over my shoulder, I will step out of frame and perhaps yell some things at him, but we'll see. But yes, the SNP is indeed attempting to embarrass the Prime Minister and expose division within the Labour Party. But it must be said, whilst almost 100 Labour MPs have said that they themselves have no confidence in Keir Starmer as Prime Minister and think that he should go, that doesn't mean that they would vote no confidence, in effect, in a parliamentary motion and collapse the government. That is overwhelmingly unlikely, and I think that we're not going to see that. We're just going to see the SNP try and embarrass the government through this motion.
Tom Harwood, thank you very much. With all the action on Downing Street, of course, there will be this debate, Andrew, in Parliament this afternoon.
Which the Prime Minister opens.
Exactly, and it's supposed to be all about the legislation that's being proposed, but I doubt that will be the focus of many MPs.
And most interventions will be about his leadership, and will any of them be helpful on his own side?
Who will turn up? That'll be the big question.
Very significant. Now, time for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to enjoy a wonderful summer on us. You could win £76,543.21 tax-free cash. Spend it where you like. Here's how the details to do it.
£76,543.21 in tax-free cash could be yours this summer. That's totally tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. What would you spend it on? Treat the family and friends to the ultimate summer party, or just relax with enough cash in the bank to make this year your best yet. And remember, because it's totally tax-free cash, you'll get to keep every single penny. So, what are you waiting for? For a chance to win £76,543.21 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB21 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 26th of June. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, coming up next, we'll have all the latest from inside Number 10 as Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, and the PM came face-to-face in Crunch Talks earlier this morning.
We'll be going to that and a lot more with our panellists Stephen Pound and Mike Parry, our very own Statton Waldorf. There they are.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always...
Scott,
you think we can allow...
Politics, policy, Parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored. Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
It's a surprise.
surprised? I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
10:19 Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates, and we've got our panel, Mike Parry and Stephen Pound in the studio. But I think we're going off to the Mall because the King is on his way, or shortly on his way. But here's the troops getting ready. It's a great the pomp and pageantry of the State Inn of Parliament, Miriam, is a wonderful thing. Did you enjoy doing it when you were there?
Oh, yes, it's an amazing spectacle. And I remember I think the first year that I properly observed it was the COVID year. And the Queen, the late Queen, had to wear a mask walking through what's called the Peers Gallery on the way into the chamber. It was quite extraordinary. But yeah, the pomp and pageantry is just so special, and that is one of the great privileges of being in Parliament. But it will be so overshadowed today.
I was about to say that's my immediate reaction. This is all, just a byproduct of the real action that's happening today, which is around the corner at Downing Street. You know what I mean?
The party politics.
Absolutely, yeah. We're all waiting for somebody to go in or come out of the black door, and nobody really cares what else is happening in the country, because I think I'm speaking for the rest of the country. I want something sorted out. You need somebody to be leading the country, and we're in a state of utter and absolute paralysis at the moment.
I think you make a very powerful case for keeping Keir Starmer in post. Thank you. Keir's grateful for your support.
Well, the other thing I'd say about keeping Keir Starmer in post is that undoubtedly, if he goes, what comes next is going to be much, much worse than what we've got now. Because much worse.
Wes Streeting I do not think can ever become Labour leader. He doesn't have the support. He's too right-wing. He's too close to Tony Blair, Mandelson, and
he's perceived very much as a Blairite. But it's the old thing, keep a hold of nurse for fear of finding something worse. But, but I think what's fascinating about this is the old consensus in British politics is now broken. The old duopoly between the two parties. All political parties were to a certain extent a hypocrisy. When Lee Anderson and I were both Labour councillors, we were both small c Conservatives. A lot of people in the old Labour Party, we were traditionally very, very Conservative. So the Labour Party was a coalition of Liberals and people, and the Conservative Party has now been outflanked on its right by Reform, on its left by the Liberal Democrats. The Labour Party has been outflanked on its left by the Greens. And so I think we're now at the end of the duopoly. We're in the 5-6 party politics. And what this is happening with Keir Starmer at the moment is it's actually coming home to roost. The Labour Party is being exposed for what it is, which is the different factions. And the Tories are no better off than us.
Well, and as the Tories discovered, the gulf between the various factions became ungovernable.
But you know more than anybody. In fact, the two of you know more than anybody else. Look, the reality is that there's a number of people in the Tory party, Tory MPs, who are Liberal Democrats.
Yes.
They are, without a shadow of a doubt.
No, there's a majority of them. David Cameron filled those backbenches. And do you know what? David Cameron was very disappointed when he got an outright small majority in his second term. He liked working with the Lib Dems. A, he could blame them for everything that went wrong. B, his own little social conscience was then, it's nothing to do with me.
Well, can you tell the difference between him and Nick Clegg? I'm sorry, David Cameron and Nick Clegg.
Well, I think Nadine Dorries summed it up quite right, didn't she? That was Osborne and
brothers from
two
different mothers.
But Stephen, take us into your party.
Yeah.
Does this break your heart to see what they're doing to each other?
It depresses me profoundly, not necessarily for my party, but for my country.
Right.
I mean, I've always believed, like you did, and you said on many occasions, it's country first, party second. And I hate what this is doing to our country. I hate the fact that we're looking down the barrel of a financial crisis at the present time. We're also looking at the possibility of a European war. Let's be honest about this. Things are terrifying at the present. The last thing we need is the Starmer drama, the psychodrama of all this happening at the present time. But as for the Labour Party, we will recover, but it'll be a different Labour Party. Are you sure? Oh, we will, but it'll be a very different Labour Party. The Labour Party as the natural government of a party of government, I have to say, I'm not sure that's going to happen again. As I think somebody said, Britain is a profoundly conservative nation that occasionally votes Labour.
But is it, though? Yeah. But it does, what's happening in the Labour Party and in the last Parliament in the Conservative Party just really reflect what's going on in the country, because on the one hand, Labour have lost a whole load of votes to Reform, who want much tighter immigration controls, lower taxes. But on the other hand, they've lost a load of voters to the Greens. And
who want no immigration controls whatsoever.
Exactly. And yesterday, our reporter Charlie Peters went to Kentish Town in the Prime Minister's constituency, and he spoke to a number of voters who said, Keir Starmer's gone too far to the right. Yeah. We don't like him talking about small boats. We are a fundamentally split country, and all Parliament's doing is reflecting that.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I don't understand the expression, the soft left. I can't see any soft left inside the Labour Party. They're all hard left. They have got policies which are going to bankrupt the country. They want, masses more of immigration. Power in this country is so expensive, companies are fleeing overseas. The country is literally collapsing under the weight of far-left legislation and thinking.
I must say, Angela Rayner, the mask slipped a little with that statement she published the other day, which was, of course, an attack on Starmer, when she revealed that she would abolish freeholds.
Well, I thought it was quite interesting when she burst into the stranger's part. They say, I'm a socialist. I think that's quite extraordinary. I think that expression is very, very unhelpful. But look, this is what getting back to the point I made earlier on. This is now the parties are splitting into small fractions. And as Mike says, the country is divided. And you said, Miriam, it is very, very... And this is reflecting it. What we've now got is little silos of opinion, not just geographical, but also cultural and social and economic.
But I think some of them will peter out. I think the Greens will peter out. I predicted that the Greens wouldn't get the landslide everybody else said they'd get at the local elections. Because people, when they're going into a box and saying, oh, the guy who runs this party wants to legalise crack cocaine. So what shopkeeper in the street wants a bunch of crackheads on crack cocaine walking into their premises and that sort of stuff? Once you examine his policies and his personal behaviour, where nothing seems to add up in his past.
Not least in what adding up. His council tax, it appears he didn't pay council tax for 3 years.
Exactly.
It's floating home.
I think the Greens will disappear. When I was on my first weekly newspaper in Chester, there were a bunch there called Friends of the Earth, and they genuinely believed in trying to save the Earth. But this lot only believe in being a Trojan horse for Muslim fanatics, and the most important issue on their agenda is Hamas.
They were the Ecology
Palestine.
Party, and you see all over London, you see these stickers, nuclear power, no thanks, or Atomkraft, near Danke. But look, a Green got elected in my part of the world last week, and on her manifesto it said this is for Gaza. I said, what's this to do with bins?
What's it got to do with Ealing?
Exactly so.
Appalling.
But I think I have to say, where I do agree, and I don't often agree with Mike, I think that as long as Polanski is the leader, they've got no chance.
No, absolutely. He's just a figure of fun.
I think he's being found out. And if this psychodrama was not engulfing Labour, I think Polanski's leadership would be in real crisis because his CV has been more embellished than Angela Rayner's.
Fair play to your paper for shining the light on this.
Rachel Reeves, sorry. Her CV's been more embellished than Rachel Reeves.
That's right.
Back to the Labour leadership crisis, though. There's an interesting piece by Professor Tim Bale, and I think it's in the New Statesman this morning, asking what Labour MPs are trying to achieve and saying that the only 3 times when leaders have been changed and it's been effective, and it's all been with Conservatives actually, has been when the party's trying to ditch a policy. So he talks about Macmillan replacing Eden over Suez, Major replacing Thatcher over the poll tax, and Johnson replacing May over Brexit. There was a point in ditching the leader because you wanted to ditch a policy that was associated with them. election.
Yeah.
But this is just another
But it's self-interest.
we don't like you kind of election.
No, it's self-interest. All those backbenchers who are first-term MPs...
We had one earlier.
Everybody's self-interested. That's nothing
but
new.
hang on, they've got a very cushy job with lots of expenses.
Do you agree with that?
No, I do not. It's
Do you agree with that?
Nice place to work, and they know full well that if Labour collapse,
16-hour
go with
days.
them.
Hang on, 16-hour days. Never seeing your children.
16-hour days. The last 8 of which was spent in the strangers bar, I suppose.
Have you ever been an MP?
Sorry?
No. Have you ever been an MP?
No, I've always had more important things to do, thank you.
Well, you don't have to take the risk, that's it, as a journalist. You can observe these things
I took a
from the
few
outside
risks.
and enjoy
down the
watching
Falls
other
Road a few
people
times.
go through the turmoil without any risk to yourself. And, you know, of course there's some bad MPs, just like there are bad people in every profession. But the kind of risks that MPs take, the exposure that you face, the reputational risk, lots of my ex-colleagues still don't have jobs. And they have families to feed too.
I think the Tories will recover. I think the Tories will recover because I think that they are so established over hundreds of years, and I think Kemi Badenoch is a very credible leader, and I think that in the next government, if it's a coalition of Reform and the Tories will build back. I'm sure they will.
Mike, can I do, on the relationship between politics and the press, you know what Rudyard Kipling wrote for his cousin, Stanley Baldwin? He said, the journalists, they have power without responsibility. It's the prerogative of the harlot.
That's right. And I've been called much worse than a harlot.
And you will be.
But Stephen, let me ask you, so your view, Wes Streeting does not have the 81 signatures, which is why he hasn't
look, the point is, Wes knows if he's got to strike now before Andy Burnham gets off the train and finds out where he's supposed to be. So he's got to go now. The fact he hasn't gone now, the fact he was in there for less than 20 minutes, proves to me that he simply doesn't have the numbers. The other thing is that when people...
So then we're stuck with Starmer. This for the foreseeable, until Burnham
in the short
possibly get into the Commons.
Come on, if there's a by-election, you know, if somebody like Graham Stringer or somebody...
It won't be him.
Yeah, well, no, somebody like that, one of the Manchester seats. Reform would throw the kitchen sink at it. And so he then goes on to the next one. What happens there? You know, I'm sorry, that simply doesn't work.
Also, there is a genuine point to make. If Andy Burnham resigns as Mayor of Greater Manchester, there has to be an election for the Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Costs about $500,000.
A lot of great public expense for an unnecessary election.
And people don't like that.
People don't like that.
But shouldn't the people of Manchester already now be saying we made a mistake with Andy Burnham? We thought he was going to be the King of the North and use Manchester as a power base to, you know, build the great investment in the North. And at the first sign of opportunity,
it does look very cynical.
He just pushes off. Gets on a train yesterday. Picture of him in the Telegraph getting on, the train. What are the people of Manchester thinking now?
There's an
you don't really want to be here.
Interesting analysis by Luke Trill, the pollster who runs More in Common in, I think it's in The Spectator today, though, saying that the Burnham factor is actually real, and saying when he's done focus groups and masses of polling around the Greater Manchester area, there is a real respect and popularity for Andy Burnham amongst people of all political affiliations. And he's saying that he's not surprised that Labour did badly in Greater Manchester last week because Andy Burnham wasn't on the ballot paper, and actually he thinks that Burnham has got a good chance in a by-election because he is genuinely popular in Manchester. So I thought that's quite an interesting
Well, a couple of things.
factor.
Firstly, Manchester is actually doing very well as a city. You know, it's actually much more economically active than other parts of the country. The second thing, he stood twice for Labour leadership. He got beaten by Billy Band and Jeremy Corbyn.
And one of the reasons he didn't do very well is because he kept shifting his policy positions.
Well, yes, the old thing about, you know, the Blairite and the Corbynite walk into a pub in the bar. He says, hello, Andy.
Exactly.
But he is the sort of bloke you wouldn't mind sitting next to at a football match, which I've done on many occasions. He's an Everton fan like me. So.
Which is appealing following Starmer.
And he's telegenic and he's a good communicator, which are important attributes for a modern politician, attributes that the Prime Minister does not have.
No, he's also, I mean, he reads the room very well indeed. He used to play in our football team. We used to call him Giggsy because he used to play on the left mid, and he was a very, very good footballer, but also a thoroughly nice bloke. And Marie-France, his wife, is absolutely charming. I think they're a great couple. But on the other, is he the salvation of the Labour Party? I honestly don't know. I think that the Labour Party, in its present form, just like the Conservative Party, is actually fracturing.
We're going to go straight to Downing Street because we've just spotted the Prime Minister. And he's with Lady Victoria, his wife. He's just getting into the car to take him off to Parliament for the King's speech.
And it's raining extremely heavily, and they don't have umbrellas.
Oh, no, it's Sunak time.
Yeah, God, that was a disaster. So, he looked very cheerful, the Prime Minister. Could read nothing in his body language.
Right. Well, shall we go to Tom Harwood, who is there at the scene?
To interpret the body language.
Yes, my goodness me, it has just started a hailstorm here in Downing Street, almost as soon as the Prime Minister stepped out of the door there. My goodness me, if you're trying to think of metaphors for the storm that the Prime Minister faces, you cannot do much better than this. It was a similar torrential downpour when Rishi Sunak called the fateful 2024 election, and it feels like we're in a turbulent time with the tempest that the Prime Minister faces. As he stepped out of that door, the heavens opened. He was there flanked by his wife, Lady Victoria Starmer, and my goodness me, they are now headed towards Parliament with a brave face on, putting on that steely face of determination. But of course, he would not respond to any of the shouts from the gathered press here on Downing Street about what on earth went on in that meeting between him and his Health Secretary just an hour or so ago. He would not answer whether he believes he has lost the country. He would not answer whether he believes he can go on as Prime Minister. He's trying to present himself as Prime Ministerial. He's trying to present himself as if he's got this brave face on. But we know that 93 of his own MPs have said the time is up for this Prime Minister. 93 of his own MPs have said it's time for him to go or to put forward a timetable for his departure. And 10 members of his own government have resigned in order to try to force him from office, despite the steely face that he is putting on as he was stepping out into the storm today. Despite that, this is a Prime Minister embattled and under threat. Now, he's got an hour or two of respite because, of course, there is the pageantry of the state opening. There is the King's speech to be had, and of course there is a more light-hearted debate in the House of Commons that will take place immediately after that. But in the back of his mind, through it all, this Prime Minister must be thinking, how numbered are his days? And might this, what feels like an almost inevitable challenge to his leadership, might it come tonight or tomorrow morning?
Tom Harwood, thank you very much. Try not to get wet. Wow, that was an interesting metaphor, wasn't it, Andrew? The heavens opened as Prime Minister left.
Excuse me, the other thing that I noted from that was, with his wife very close, is his wife now also his only advisor left he can trust? Because he's got rid of so many so many people around him who should have been advising him over this critical 7 days. You wonder whether the only person he is turning to is his wife, because I don't know the name of any other advisors.
It's always a good idea to ask your wife for opinion, in my view.
Well, I mean, and I think...
I don't ask my wife, I'm told.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, look at the body language. They look completely fine. You would not believe that the Prime Minister is under siege with nearly a quarter of his backbenchers saying, clear off, mate.
Maybe he's the kind of person who really enjoys being in this kind of fight or flight situation.
I mean, I'm always very...
Does anybody really?
But he has got an extraordinarily finely honed survival instinct.
Indeed. The only time he's ruthless. The only time he's ruthless is it's me that's at stake here, not the country, not the party.
He was ruthless in clearing out anti-Semitism from the Labour Party. He was ruthless in keeping his own position, and he's being ruthless now in fending off a challenge. But when it came to things like not allowing his backbenchers to push him around over benefits cuts or winter fuel allowance, he's caved so many times on policy.
Exactly.
When it comes to... He sacked Morgan McSweeney, he sacked Ollie Robbins.
Absolutely.
It's a very interesting
But he was
personality.
incredibly ruthless when it came to actually selecting candidates in the election.
Exactly, yes, that's
I
another
have
one.
to say, it absolutely, not just Sam Tarry and people like that, but the number of people who he absolutely just said, no chance. And that was brutal. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, actually. You know, people who've been Labour Party activists for years, but suddenly took their papers were torn up.
Even though West Streeting hasn't got the numbers, hasn't he completely bottled it? Hasn't he? Hasn't he completely just given us all a false hope of leading?
I made the point in the Mail today. This is Portillo all over again.
Exactly.
Bottling it.
Yes.
Portillo had the 25 phone lines. But what was extraordinary about? I think somebody said to Wes Streeting, were you plotting over the weekend? He said, no. Peter Carl and I went to see The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
What a great excuse.
Yes, but they had dinner afterwards, with plenty of time to plot and scheme. And of course, Peter Carl, as the business secretary, would be almost de facto Streeting's campaign manager.
Oh, without a shadow. Yeah.
You mentioned Sam Tarry. He's written in the New Statesman today a piece entitled "Run, Angela Rayner, Run."
And remind me, who's Sam Tarry's girlfriend?
Exactly. It's actually apparently about a 5-kilometre running race she entered for charity, but I'm not sure that's what it's supposed to be about.
She did the Big Mudder over the weekend.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, panel. We'll come back to you shortly.
We are going to talk now to the historian and political biographer, Sir Anthony Seldon, who is on College Green in Westminster. Sir Anthony, good morning to you.
Is it great?
Good morning. What a day.
Indeed.
Can you recall, Sir Anthony, such an extraordinary political backdrop to a King or Queen speech?
No, I can't. I mean, there have been some pretty desperate ones. Jim Callaghan, for older viewers, will remember the Winter of Discontent, and he was trying to do, Labour Prime Minister, what Starmer's trying to do today, which is to get confidence back in his leadership. And then there was John Major after the Black Wednesday, a terrible economic meltdown, when he again tried to remind MPs and indeed the country why he should be Prime Minister still, through the Queen's speech as it then was, with a lot of measures like Starmer has now. But I think probably the nearest analogy was Theresa May. After that, she called an early general election in 2017 to get her own majority, and it went spectacularly badly. It was a minority government, and she had a very difficult Queen's speech then to say, well, to come up with anything actually that she could come up with to take the country forward that wasn't just about Brexit. So there have been tricky ones, but I can't recall anything as bad as this.
And we've even heard, Sir Anthony, that Buckingham Palace were in touch through the usual channels with Number 10 as to whether the King's speech should even go ahead today.
Well, I don't think there was anything in that. I think that if the palace had said no, it's not going to go ahead, then everyone would have said that was the monarchy doing in the Prime Minister, because I think if it hadn't gone ahead, that would have been fatal for Keir Starmer. So that was never going to happen, to be honest. But it was intriguing that Wes Streeting demanded that everyone knew that he was going in to see the Prime Minister for 15, 17 minutes, was it, before the King's speech today.
So, Anthony, we're just going to stop you there for a moment, because on our screen we're seeing pictures of the King in the state carriage leaving Buckingham Palace.
Yep, on his way to Parliament to deliver that King's speech. He will be in the carriage with him, of course, was Queen Camilla.
And in a separate carriage, I believe, travels the Crown and the various other regalia.
They do.
Arrive at the King's entrance underneath Victoria Tower in Parliament. And apparently, on the wall of the robing room in Parliament is the death warrant that was signed for King Charles to remind monarchs.
Charles I, that is.
I've got, sorry.
Yes.
I should
anyone to think it's Charles I. Yes.
There's also, don't forget, in the robing room, there's a secret toilet. There's a hidden door in the wainscoting that, should the monarch wish to
spend a penny,
take advantage. But people say afterwards, apparently, the pedestal is smashed up, or the seat is smashed up. Otherwise, it would be on eBay by breakfast time.
Yes, fair point. But the death warrant is there apparently to remind monarchs what should happen if they annoy Parliament too much.
Yeah, exactly. Are we going to go back to Sir Anthony Seldon? Yeah, let's go back to Sir Anthony Seldon. Are you with us, Sir Anthony? Have we got you?
Just thinking there.
Yeah. So, Sir Anthony, you were saying it was intriguing to see Wes Streeting making it quite clear that he was going into Number 10 to see the Prime Minister, walk through the front door, left through the front door. What do you read into that?
Well, it's a sign of Wes Streeting's strength, isn't it, and the Prime Minister's weakness that he would even want to do that on such an important day as this. I mean, that is a really significant move, that a challenger, the man who wants to be Prime Minister, is taking up the Prime Minister's time, and us all knowing about it in the country ahead of such an important day. So I think that's not a good sign for the Prime Minister's longevity in office. Neither actually is looking at those pictures there of the King's party leaving Buckingham Palace in the rain. Reminders there of Rishi Sunak coming out in the rain to announce the 2024 general election that, of course, saw the end of Sunak, but the beginning of Keir Starmer in the rain. Will a rainy backdrop be the day that sees the end of Keir Starmer? Who knows?
Now, lots of commentators are talking about this being a particularly or even uniquely unstable time in British politics. But of course, we have had other eras of instability, the 70s, the early 1900s. Which period in history does this most remind you of?
So there have, as you say, I mean, we're always inclined to think that this is the biggest, the worst ever. But it's unique in this sense that if Keir Starmer goes, there'll have been 7 prime ministers in 10 years. Now that is unique. And for the Labour Party, that's only ever had 6 previous prime ministers, they've all been in power on average for 5 years, and Keir Starmer less than 2, so that is unprecedented. Today is unprecedented to have all this turbulence when the attention of the whole world who are watching on Parliament and on the King's speech, to have it so upstaged by a Labour infighting a challenge to the Prime Minister. So, yeah, I mean, how does it compare to the general strike 100 years ago this week? The only general strike Britain's ever had. Well, it's not as threatening as that, a sign of thunder in the background. But as far as political crises go, yeah, it's right up there at the top.
Yes, and of course we do wonder what is going to be said as those politicians walk formally through the Houses of Parliament, what kind of conversations they might be having.
Yes. Wouldn't it be great if we could hear, if there were microphones? Wouldn't it be great if we knew? But when they are so obviously in camera, they're not in microphone, what they generally talk about is pretty banal, pretty inconsequential things. They're just struggling to try and make conversation. And I mean, what would Kemi Badenoch really like to be saying to Keir Starmer? What indeed did Wes Streeting say to him this morning? We'll know that in time, a long time before they publish their memoirs. And it's often the conversations we don't hear that are the most interesting.
So, Anthony, I personally think that a lot of the problems that the Labour Party face are ones of policy and politics and reflect the general realignment within British politics. But nevertheless, there's been so much criticism of Keir Starmer's character and personality. Do you think he is uniquely unsuited to political leadership?
Not uniquely, but he's certainly unsuited to it. I mean, of course, Labour has enormous problems. It's lost the trade unions pretty much. It's losing its working class support. That makes it very difficult for it. But that's exacerbated by the fact that there was a Prime Minister who, unlike Tony Blair, unlike Harold Wilson, they both came in after long periods of Conservative opposition. I mean, they were formidable communicators. They were remarkable in telling a story about where they were taking the country. Harold Wilson perhaps even better, more so than Tony Blair. And Keir Starmer doesn't have that ability. He doesn't inspire. He doesn't make you want to listen to him. And so I think that's such an important quality of a Prime Minister, to be able to tell a story, tell it compellingly, and say why people should stay loyal to Labour and not go off to reform. I mean, that's what a lot of this is all about, isn't it? The challengers, and they think that perhaps by moving centre-left, by having more fairness, and who's to say they're wrong? But unless they produce the money somehow, and Labour in 2 years hasn't grown the economy, hasn't grown employment in any significant way, indeed they put in measures to damage both, it's not going in the direction of generating the money that then allows you to do the things that a Labour government wants to do.
Also, Anthony, that Starmer's had the worst start for a Labour Prime Minister in the last 80 years, certainly since 1945.
Well, Andrew, yeah, I mean, I wrote an article in the Times saying I thought it was the worst start. This was a year ago, since Anthony Eden, who became Prime Minister in 1955. He made so many baby, simple mistakes that you would not expect a Prime Minister to make, including his appointments, including not having a plan for growth, indeed not having a plan for his government at all, not making certain that all his cabinet ministers knew what they were going to be doing. I mean, why do you want to become Prime Minister if you don't want to learn how to lead the country? It's puzzling. Yeah. So I think it really has been a very weak start, and to move so quickly from a landslide victory less than 2 years ago into the lowest ratings, the lowest ratings ever for a Prime Minister. I mean, that takes a beating. Yeah, really poor.
Well, Anthony Seldon, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
We're going to talk to the royal author and journalist Alex Larman now. Alex, good morning. Good to talk to you.
Morning, Andrew. Always a pleasure.
Set the scene for us. State opening of Parliament, the King doing this against a backdrop of extraordinary political infighting which has engulfed the government. But this is one of the most important events in the monarch's year.
Yes, I mean, I think that from King Charles's perspective, it would have been much easier if all this wasn't happening, because ultimately the King's speech is quite a strange event constitutionally, because it's a speech delivered by the King, which has absolutely none of his own input. It is a speech written for him by the government, and his entire involvement with it is a purely formal one. But on the other hand, it's quite hard to be saying, my government's going to do this, my government's going to do that, when it's looking more likely than not that the Prime Minister is going to face a serious challenge to his authority within the next couple of days. And so there is rumours going about that have been denied, but are still quite interesting, that the palace was actually saying last night, can we do the King's speech? Because obviously what Buckingham Palace does not want is any kind of embarrassment or any kind of difficulty, because the King's speech is a very carefully run, very formal occasion. And as you can see from the pictures in front of you, including bizarrely that 27-year-old lady in the House of Lords, you can see that it's an event that people are taking very seriously and that they want everything to go like clockwork. But the problem is, there is such instability at the moment, there is such uncertainty, that the King's speech, I mean, if he doesn't raise an eyebrow and make a few slightly ironic references and ironic allusions, even though it's not his speech, it's a government speech, I'd be very surprised, because as we saw from his extraordinary address to Congress a couple of weeks ago, Charles really likes doing these public events. He really likes giving King's speeches and other speeches, and this is going to be his fourth King's speech this year. And even a couple of weeks ago, you could have probably predicted all this was going to happen. I think this is the crucial thing to remember. We're talking about this period of extraordinary, political instability. Everyone knew what was going to happen at the local elections. Everyone knew it was going to be a landslide defeat for Labour. And so all of this could have been priced in. We could have seen there was going to be a serious attack on Starmer, possibly it was going to force him out of office quite soon. And so the King of Buckingham Palace must have known this is going to be a more tumultuous King's speech than usual. They must have known there was the potential that something could go wrong. And hopefully, from the King's perspective, from Buckingham Palace's perspective, it won't go wrong. It'll be quite straightforward. But we shall see over the next hour or so.
Alex, are there any constitutional problems with the King delivering a speech laying out the government's programme and then the government's programme changing? Let's say Keir Starmer does lose a leadership election and a new Prime Minister comes in and wants to do a completely different tranche of legislation. Would that be a problem? Would we need a new King's speech?
Well, Miriam, I don't think it's ever happened before, because obviously the government is elected for 5 years on a manifesto which it then has to deliver, regardless of who is actually in charge. So if, say, Andy Burnham became Prime Minister, and then Andy Burnham decided he's going to completely shift away from everything that Starmer was elected on, then he would have to call an election. Then there would have to be a new King's speech in the very unlikely event that Labour won that election. And then it would all start all over again, which obviously the King would not see that as anything other than a mild irritation, because this is part of his job. I don't think he particularly relishes doing these speeches, because ultimately he doesn't get to put any of his own personality in. I mean, you can see when he addressed Congress a couple of weeks ago, that was his speech. It had his jokes, his allusions. It felt like his voice. This is simply a political speech which the monarch delivers. And of course, Charles is much better at public speaking than his mother ever was. I mean, he's the most adept at public speaking there's been in, since probably his very, very short-lived predecessor, Edward VIII, who was also very good at public speaking. You can see that Charles really relishes the chance to go and actually impress people and actually be quite theatrical, I think. So today, I think, will be no exception in that regard. But of course, as we're all saying, it's not the speech, it's not even the content of the speech, it's what's going on around it and the storm clouds that are gathering. I mean, both literally and metaphorically, which I find a bit on the nose, but, whoever's in charge of the weather has a sense of humour.
Yes, it is indeed a day of high theatre, and we're just seeing images of the House of Lords. We've seen the House of Lords, the Peers Gallery, which is just a very, very long hall that the King and his entourage walk through. What will be going through the King's mind at this point, Alex? Does he get nervous about public speaking? Will he just be thinking about the formalities and where he's supposed to stand and sit? I mean, is this his third King's speech?
Fourth, I think.
Fourth.
Yeah.
Fourth King's speech. I don't know, because the King is not somebody who ever publicly has seemed nervous about these things, because it's interesting. I mean, the Prince of Wales, his son William, has often talked about his nerves and his sense of not, almost imposter syndrome. You think, well, God, if the Prince of Wales feels imposter syndrome, how should the rest of us feel? But I think this is something that, because the King has had so many years of doing public events, he's been preparing for this his entire life, and I think that he really enjoys being king. I mean, you can see a lot of the time, even despite the health struggles he's been having over the last few years, and of course the fact that the country's gone to the dogs since he became king, you can also see that he enjoys the pageantry, he enjoys the formality, he enjoys the way in which the very public-facing aspects of it are things he's very good at. And so today, I mean, yes, there might be a bit of, oh God, got to robe up, got to go and do a speech, got to go in a really uncomfortable state carriage, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, this is what he sees as part of the monarchy. He sees the pageantry, the formality and all the rest of it as a vital part of what he does. So from that perspective, no, I don't think he feels nervous. I think he feels it's business as usual. It's what he wants to do.
Well, Alex Larman, royal journalist and author, thank you so much for joining us. Well, now with us in the studio, we've got the former Attorney General and constitutional expert, Sir Michael Ellis. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Miriam.
Talk us through some of the images we're seeing here.
Well, this is Queen Alexandra's state coach, and it was built in 1865 and converted for the then Princess of Wales, Alexandra, who was the consort of the later King Edward VII. And it's carrying the imperial state crown. And the crown gets its own carriage coming before the king. It's also carrying the cap of maintenance and the sword of state. So in a moment, I think we'll see the crown jeweller wearing the white gloves, the head jeweller of Mappin and Webb, who's was appointed in 2017. He's the only person allowed to touch the crown with his bare hands, other than the sovereign, although he's got white gloves on today. And he's going to take the imperial state crown out of the carriage. Senior ranking military officers have been travelling with it to protect it. The cap of maintenance is another symbol of the authority of the crown that was
believed to have been given by the Pope in around the year 1500 to either King Henry VII or King Henry VIII. It's been slightly lost in the
Very ungrateful of Henry VIII.
Yes, later it was rather ungrateful, wasn't it? But I don't think that cap is quite as old as that, but the first cap of maintenance was given around then. And then the Sword of State, again a symbol of the Crown's authority, a bejewelled sword that dates from the 1600s, which will, I think, be carried by an Air Chief Marshal. So the procession has included one of Edward VII's town coaches, which you may have seen on your screens a few minutes ago, which contains the two maces that they deliberately have sticking outside of the window. And that shows the authority of the sovereign. The maces are part of the authority of the sovereign and the dignity and protection of the crown. But there's the Sword of State on the right, and the cap of maintenance you can see closer to the camera, and of course the Imperial State Crown there is being handed to be carried up the stairs to the Norman porch. And the stairs that we'll see are lined by the Household Cavalry, the Blues and Royals, the Lifeguards on one side and the Blues and Royals on the other. And if you look when they're not standing there, Andrew and Miriam, you'll actually see, they're going to hold it for a moment, but you can see the Household Cavalry on either side of the staircase. When they're not there, the spurs that they have worn over the course of the past 175 years have scratched the stonework really quite badly. And there are the two maces. And
how much do they weigh?
Well, 11 kilograms is the weight of the, so it's quite heavy. And the House of Lords mace is made of silver gilt. And so it's solid silver covered with gold, and dates from the latter part of the 17th century, around the time of the restoration of the monarchy. In the 1670s it was made. That's the one we'll also see. So this is the Royal Gallery where guests have been seated waiting for the arrival. There'll be a ceremonial arrival of the Imperial State Crown in due course.
And how heavy is the crown?
Well, it is pretty heavy, and of course the late Queen wore it throughout her reign, but right up until the very end, where I think the last occasion it was too heavy for the late Queen, because it really is quite something. And it also, because it's quite tall, it doesn't feel, apparently, I mean, I wouldn't know from personal experience, but it doesn't feel particularly stable. But this is slightly smaller than the crown used for coronations. And here's the staircase leading up to the Norman porch with the Lifeguards and the Blues and Royals protecting as they are. And there's the Imperial State Crown. Now, that was made of gold by Garrard's, a firm that still exists. Miriam, it contains 2,800 diamonds and 17 sapphires, 11 emeralds and 4 rubies.
It must be priceless.
Oh, it's absolutely priceless. But some of the really special, they'll place it now on a cushion in the Royal Gallery. And I think in due course, it's being handed now to Lord Carrington, who is the hereditary Lord Great Chamberlain. The Lord Great Chamberlain...
Was his father Peter Carrington?
No, it's a different family.
Right.
But they take it in turns, these two families, the Marquis of Cholmondeley and the Lords Carrington, and they only change when a reign changes. So the Cholmondeleys had it for 70 years while the late Queen reigned, and then it changed when the King came to the throne. And they're going to place the cap of maintenance and the sword of state also on dioceses, awaiting the royal procession in due course. But what's extraordinary, of course, about that crown is that it has in it some very special jewels, deeply historic jewels. St. Edward's sapphire is absolutely ancient. It was found apparently in the tomb of St Edward the Confessor in the year 1163.
Goodness.
And the Stuart sapphire is another famous jewel. It's in the centre of the top cross of that crown, and that was actually the Stuart sapphire is at the back. Now the king is leaving now the Buckingham Palace, but the Stuart sapphire was smuggled out by King James II, of course, at the Glorious Revolution in 1688. And also in the crown is the very special Black Prince's ruby, which is actually not a ruby, it's a spinel, but that was given to Edward III's son in 1367.
The Black Prince?
Yes, the Black Prince's ruby. And it was named after him. And apparently Henry V wore it at the Battle of Agincourt.
Good Lord.
So those jewels, the Cullinan II diamond is in there as well. That was given by the government of Transvaal, a British colony, in 1907. So you've got those really special jewels. But His Majesty now, with the Queen, is leaving Buckingham Palace. And
Michael, to what extent have these traditions grown over the years, or are most of them very, very historic?
Most of them are historic. They date, really, the state opening of Parliament actually dates from the late 1300s.
Wow.
So it really is very ancient. But of course it's undergone dips and troughs, and it's undergone changes. And King Edward VII, 1901 to 1910, he changed quite a lot. He introduced quite a lot of new ceremonial. But His Majesty's travelling, I think, in the Irish state coach.
And it won't be comfortable.
They're not terribly comfortable.
That's what
Apparently, I've been told that they can make one quite motion sick, you know, because of the way they move. We're not used to, I presume, people in days when before motor cars
I don't think
were more
the
used
seats have springs.
Yes. But the Irish state coach, made in Ireland in 1853, a favourite of Queen Victoria's, apparently, so maybe it is a little bit less shaky. And on the roof of that coach, it's quite interesting to note, they have roses, thistles and shamrocks for England, Scotland and Ireland. But they also have palm trees. And the reason for the palm trees is because they were added in 1876 for Queen Victoria when she became Empress of India.
Oh, but no Wales.
Well, Wales
No
is often incorporated. Well, Wales is very well represented, as you might imagine. But on that carriage, there are the roses that represent England and Wales. But
I don't think Plaid Cymru would think much of that.
But the horses, by the way, that are carrying His Majesty, I've been given their names. They're called Milford Haven and Runnymede, Echo, Knightsbridge, Newark and Maple. And, of course, it's pretty wet weather at the moment, but actually the horses and the military personnel rather like cooler weather from the extreme heat that one sometimes gets at events like Trooping the Colour.
And we've seen crowds of people lining the streets with full sets of umbrellas. It is absolutely tipping it down. We're now witnessing a covered stand where people are inside and dry. I think that's a better place to sit.
And who are those guests? Are they guests of the government or guests of the House of Lords?
Both, and they'll be guests of various members of Parliament and peers as well. It's a ticket event, and they will be issued by ballot. And the streetliners, you see there right outside Parliament, the Royal Navy are lining the street, but at various points in the procession, there's different parts of His Majesty's Armed Forces who are the streetliners. So from Buckingham Palace to the Mall, we've got the Foot Guards. From the Mall to Whitehall, the Royal Air Force are lining the streets. And then from Whitehall to Parliament is the Royal Navy. And that's one of the chandeliers in the House of Lords. The throne that you see there was designed by Pugin, and is brass with rock crystal, and absolutely stunning and incredibly impressive design. And the mace being carried there before, I think that was Lord Forsyth, who is
the Lord Speaker, isn't he?
He's the current Lord Speaker.
Former
yes.
Conservative minister in the Thatcher era.
That's right, and he's being taken in procession with the mace from the House of Lords, which I described earlier as the one that weighs 11 kilograms.
And of course, Republicans would just be contemptuous of this.
Well, I presume perhaps they would.
But I think it's one of the great things about our monarchy:
I
the
agree.
pageantry,
And,
the tradition, the spectacle.
Absolutely.
Some boring old president, you would get nothing like this.
No, they'd all be in business suits.
Yeah.
And I think this is a spectacle that's known the world over.
Yeah.
But what we'll have seen now is, of course, everyone is now waiting with bated breath for the arrival of the sovereign. And when His Majesty arrives with the Queen, he'll come up the steps to the Norman porch, into the robing room, where the crown will be worn, and he'll have a robe of state put on, and will then start the procession into the House of Lords. The interesting thing as well in the King's procession, the ladies-in-waiting, as they were called, now the companions to the Queen, will be following in the glass coach. And this was a coach built in the 1880s, has often been used by royal brides. And I think there's the Lord Chancellor you can see on your screen now, David Lammy. And wearing the full-bottomed wig of the roll, which is nice to see, made of horsehair.
That'll be uncomfortable too.
They tend to be worn now only for ceremonial occasions rather than in court itself.
And on the crown, the imperial state crown, is that the only occasion where the king will adorn the king's head this year?
Yes, probably that is the case. They're not worn terribly often,
no.
Of course, and St Edward's crown is worn even more rarely. But at least it gets its annual airing. And it's very nice to see all of these robes of state being worn. There are real acts of craftsmanship and artisanry skill. Eden Ravenscroft, one of the oldest tailors in the world, believed to be the oldest tailors in the world, established in the 1680s, I think, still make these robes for judges and for members of the royal family and others. And they also make those wigs from horsehair. And it's a wonderful skill that we wouldn't want to see lost. But I was talking about the glass coach, which is behind the king, containing what were the ladies-in-waiting, now called ladies' companion, the Marchioness of Lansdowne, the Lady Sarah Keswick in there with Lord Ashton, the Master of the Horse, and the Earl of Roslin, who is the Lord Steward to the king. And there are 3 other state landaus that are behind the king's procession. So there's 5 carriages in total bringing the king now. He should arrive very shortly at the Palace of Westminster, which was, of course, still is a royal palace, but Henry VIII was the last one to live there and moved out.
Of course, Westminster Hall is one of the oldest buildings of its type, I think, in the world, nearly 1,000 years old, and a particular type of ceiling.
That's right. And an absolutely ancient hall, one of the few places that we know every king and queen since 1100 would have been in there at least once.
And Anne Boleyn was tried in there, Charles I was tried. Incredible. I think that Westminster Hall is the most special building in the whole of Parliament.
Extraordinary. It's so atmospheric.
And isn't that where the monarch lies in state?
Yes, that's exactly right, Andrew. And it's interesting to see the peers here in their parliamentary robes. You can see on some of them the stripes. There are 2 stripes from this angle. And it's a little known fact that it's a rank structure. And if you're a duke, you can have 4 stripes. If you're a marquis, the next rank down, you have 3.5. An earl has 3, a viscount has 2.5, and a baron, which is the vast majority of them, has 2 stripes.
Of course, the first state opening of Parliament with no hereditary peers. Well, there are some hereditary peers who've been given life peerages, I assume.
25.
But that's right.
But nobody is there because of their hereditary...
Apart from the king.
It's an
Apart from the king, that's a very good point.
They've allowed a couple of hereditaries, the Duke of Norfolk, for example, and Lord Carrington, the Lord...
Because of their ceremonial roles.
But only for ceremonial roles, not to vote and sit in the Lords anymore, yes. And it is, that is, of course, a change of many centuries of our history.
But if something as fundamental as that can be changed by the government, which it has been, how safe do you think the other traditions in this state opening Parliament really are? I mean, we've heard, the Reform Party speak about major changes to the House of Lords. Parties on the left, the Greens, no doubt, would have something to say about these traditions.
Yes.
How easy would it be for an incoming government to dispense of some of these ceremonial occasions?
I think, there would be a resistance. There would be considerable resistance to major change, because this is part of the panoply of monarchy. And by the way, recognised the world over, that attracts a huge income for this country. People don't recognise that, or not everyone does, that in fact, whereas if we had a presidency and a few more politicians in suits, there would be no tourist value to that. But of course, having a monarchy with all of these ceremonials of state brings in tremendous positive goodwill towards this country and a tremendous tourist attraction. And much of the expense of the monarchy, maintaining buildings and so on, you'd still have to maintain if you turned them into museums. So you wouldn't actually be saving an awful lot of money. But I think we're going to see His Majesty arriving soon. And this is the household division, the household cavalry there.
Coming down Whitehall, of course, such a famous street used for so many important occasions. And I remember, Michael, before the late Queen's funeral, we were both in Parliament at the time, and seeing the rehearsals for that, actually in the middle of the night for a few days before, the whole of Whitehall closed off, the whole of Parliament Square closed off, even Westminster Bridge, where the horses and military were practising their marches, their processions, and it is incredibly inspiring to see those kind of numbers, those kind of traditions in the heart of our capital city.
Exactly, and of course it gives the armed forces tremendous pride to be able to perform their functions here. These are the supporting carriages carrying members of the royal household and so on, including Sir Clive Alderton, the private secretary to the King. But you're right, Miriam. I think when it comes to the military, the bands that are performing, for example, we've got the dismounted band of the Household Cavalry there at Green Park. The band of the Grenadier Guards have been performing, the band of the Scots Guards, the band of the Royal Air Force, the band of the Royal Marines. And they're entertaining the crowds that have been lining the streets of the Mall from Buckingham Palace. And outside the House of Lords is the 1st Battalion of the Grenadier Guards. They'll be proudly displaying their colour, which of course is a sacred item for them, containing 45 of their 77 battle honours, dating from 1680 to 1991. And those are the 6 greys that I named earlier. I'm afraid I can't tell you which one is which.
They're not wearing name badges, sadly.
No, the late Queen would be able very much to recognise each horse, I think. But the King and Queen arriving. And there's the Irish state coach with the decoration on the roof that I was talking about before, which contains the shamrock and the rose and so on, and the palm tree for India.
Of course, it does remind us how important horses used to be in London and across the country, not just for ceremonial purposes or sport, which of course the only reason they're kept today. And I've just in the late 19th century, there are approximately 300,000 horses living and working in London. You know, before Ubers, before the black cab, the horse was the only way to get around. And yet now that we really only see them on occasions like this. For ceremony, but they were such a big part of all these ceremonies.
Absolutely, they were, and...
No, I'm just going to interrupt because we're getting our first glimpse of the Queen, Camilla. She's leaving very gingerly leaving the state coach, dressed in white. St Michael, does she always wear white?
Yes, traditionally, for state occasions, she will wear white or a variety, you know, ivory or cream. Yeah. The King in the uniform there of an Admiral of the Fleet, with cap and sword, and the Queen is wearing a diadem that dates from 1820, the Georgian diadem of diamonds, which the late Queen wore for her portraits of on stamps, banknotes, coinage, very familiar to a lot of people, that particular diadem that Queen Camilla is wearing. These are the heralds that are climbing the stairs now, if you like, the ones that look like playing cards, and the maces leading the procession. Then Lord Carrington, carrying his white wand of office, is following behind the Lord Chancellor, David Lammy, and the Duke of Norfolk.
Just remind us why the Lord Chancellor is such an important figure in this ceremony.
Well, of course, the Lord Chancellor is one of the great offices of state traditionally, and it was the only office that actually contained a responsibility in all three branches of government. I mean, the Americans often talk about separation of powers and separating the legislature from the executive from the judiciary. But until Jack Straw, 25 years ago, the Lord Chancellor, Lord Hailsham, for example, he was a member of the judiciary and would sit as a judge for some weeks of the year. He was a member of the executive because he would sit in the cabinet, and he was a member of the legislature who could vote in the House of Lords. So he would wear a tricorn hat on ceremonial occasions, and it would be the three branches of government.
Well, Sir Michael Ellis, thank you. We're just going to leave it there now and cross to Downing Street, where GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Fawcett, has some news.
Yes, good morning from Downing Street, where we saw the Prime Minister leave in a hailstorm, and we've had thunder here as well. It is now being reported by The Times that Wes Streeting, who was here just a couple of hours ago, the Health Secretary, he was in and out in just 16 minutes, is going to mount a leadership challenge to the Prime Minister tomorrow. It won't happen today because, of course, of the King's speech. But he has told allies that he is going to go for it, that he is going to resign and mount a leadership challenge. Now, we always knew that it was probably now or never for Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, before Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, is able to get a seat in Parliament. He always said, and I spoke to his allies just yesterday, that he wouldn't move unless it was clear that the Prime Minister was going to have to go. That seems now to have been that he's escalated it. He's taken the call, and what is likely to happen then is he will not be the only one, because there is no way that the left of the party is going to allow Wes Streeting to go alone. But of course, we don't know what happens, because the Prime Minister is digging in. I spoke to people inside Number 10 earlier who said things felt much better than yesterday, and that you know, he is going nowhere. So a big moment coming tomorrow.
Oh, well, that's an extraordinary development. Catherine Forster, our chief political correspondent, thank you so much for that, and she'll bring us more when we get more. That's an extraordinary development. I think he would be pretty bruised by reports that he's ducked the challenge, Miriam.
Absolutely. I mean, what a time for the news to come out as well. MPs will, of course, be looking at their phones. Do you remember the budget that was leaked?
I do.
Where the OBR report was leaked in advance, and again, all the MPs in the House of Commons suddenly looking at Twitter, suddenly looking at their phones. Exactly the same thing will be happening now. Any pretence that they're focusing on the contents of the King's speech will have gone out the window.
So, Michael, what will the King make of this? Because this will now completely overshadow the King's speech.
Well, I think, as we heard, look, His Majesty and the dignity with which he carries himself and holds that office is such that he will rise above it, as he's shown recently in the United States Congress. There's the throne, by the way, and you can see there while it's on screen, the consort's throne on the right is 1 inch lower than the sovereign's throne. But this is a controversial political development at a time, Andrew, when we are seeing one of the main ceremonial events of the state. And we had, of course, been told that any challenge to the Prime Minister would not occur today because of the ceremonial. That's the cloth of the state there, with delicate gold embroidery, and the Pugin throne, made in 1847. By tradition, Privy Councillors can sit on the steps of the throne when the House of Lords is in session. And in front of the throne, immediately in front, are the most senior judges in the land. The Lady Chief Justice, Baroness Carr, will be there. You can determine her by the fact that she's the only judge with a gold chain around her. And Supreme Court justices, Lords Justices of Appeal are also there. So they sit on the woolsacks in the middle. And on the left of our screen, ambassadors and high commissioners from many countries, many of them in their national dress, are also waiting on the King. And on the right of the screen, you can see the ladies in state clothing. They will be spouses of peers who will have drawn lots to attend on this occasion.
And Michael, it's quite hard to tell on the screen, but the chamber of the House of Lords is really quite small. And if you stand in there, whether or not it's full or empty, it's certainly not an impressive sight. It's an exceptionally impressive room in terms of the decor and the history and the gold and the red leather. It's beautiful.
It is.
But it's small, and the peers can barely fit in there, and certainly only a handful of MPs can fit behind the bar, as it's called, to observe.
That's right. It is beautiful, though, and much more ornate than the House of Commons. That was Mr. Speaker there, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, coming in procession with his Sergeant-at-Arms carrying the Commons mace, which also dates from the 1660s. Mr. Speaker's wearing his state robes, but very especially, Miriam and Andrew, he is wearing Honiton lace jabot around his neck, and the ruffles on his arms by his sleeves. These were made by a lady called Mrs. Patricia Perryman in the 1980s, and they've been brought out of a museum to be worn again. They were worn by Betty Boothroyd, the Speaker, and Michael Martin. They weren't worn by Sir Lindsay Hoyle's predecessor, but he's...
That's the ghastly John Bercow.
But he, Sir Lindsay has, I'm delighted to say, was a very popular speaker. And he's brought them back. And Mrs. Perryman, I believe, is 87 years of age, and she spent 1,500 hours making those items in Honiton lace in the 1980s.
Gosh,
hugely complicated.
That's basically a year of working time.
Apparently it took 2 years.
Wow.
To make...
She worked part-time.
So it's a very laborious exercise, but it's a tremendous skill. I don't think any machine, even today, can make Honiton lace Queen Victoria liked it so much that she had her wedding gown made of Honiton lace, at least in part. So Mr. Speaker's done a wonderful thing there to bring those back and to wear them for this very special occasion. They're far better worn than in a display case, I think.
Quite right too, yeah, absolutely.
Now, Michael, you mentioned that the House of Lords is so ornate. We're just seeing pictures of all the gold leaf there.
Yes.
The Commons, not so. Now, my understanding, and I'm sure you correct me if I'm wrong, is that because it was partially destroyed in the war and rebuilt afterwards in the 40s, the politicians of the time thought it would be a bad look to embellish it in the same style as the House of Lords, given the austerity that the country was still living through, rationing, rebuilding after the war. Is that correct?
It is, and a lot of the stained glass that was smashed during that enemy action in World War II was replaced with plain glass, which is a terrible shame because prior to that, the coats of arms of all of the boroughs that used to send MPs to the House of Commons after the 1832 Reform Bill were in the windows in stained glass. Many of them were smashed. Some still exist, but the ones that were broken were replaced by plain glass as an austerity measure. The throne's dutifully awaiting the sovereign now, and the heralds also standing by. It was a custom until relatively recently, Andrew and Miriam, for certain officials to walk backwards the entire length. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
And that changed, I think, if I remember correctly, in the 1990s.
Somebody have an accident?
I don't think anyone ever did, actually, but it was His Majesty's coming out now.
There's the trumpeters.
Imperial state crown, pages carrying his and the Queen's train. In front of the King, you might just see there the cap of maintenance is being borne by the leader of the House of Lords, Baroness Smith of Basildon, and the sword of state is being carried by Air Chief Marshal the Lord Peach. And the King is slowly processing now. The lady's companion, Lady Sarah Keswick, and the Marchioness of Lansdowne are following. The little page boys are usually relatives of people known to the royal family or other high officials. We're often not given their names, but they're wearing, of course, the state outfit, including knee breeches, white stockings and buckled shoes. Oftentimes the shoes have red heels, which is a tradition. His Majesty's wearing the robe of state there, traditionally of ermine.
And it reminds me, Michael, in the many years ago, there were quite a few Republicans on the Labour benches who pointedly stayed in the Commons rather than processed to the House of Lords, because they didn't believe in the power of the House of Lords anyway, because of the hereditary principle and appointed, and also they objected to the King's role, the monarch's role in delivering the speech.
Yes.
It was a rather sullen protest, I think.
Yes, and the vast majority follow through, and everyone rising now. And the Duke of Norfolk, just in front of the King there.
Who's the Premier Peer?
He's the Premier Peer of all England, and the Earl Marshal, hereditary Earl Marshal, which basically means that he's officially in charge of all state ceremonial. And when His Majesty is seated and things have settled, and when he is ready, he will give a discreet signal to an official.
My lords, pray be seated.
Go and get the House of Commons. And the official is Lord Carrington, carrying the white wand of office. The blue key on his back is a symbol of his authority, and he's been given a signal by the King. He raises his wand of office, which in turn has sent another signal to this official.
Is that Black
who
Rod?
is Black Rod,
And
newly
just remind me
appointed.
Who Black Rod is?
He is the most senior representative of the royal household in Parliament, and he is effectively the Sergeant at Arms for the House of Lords, responsible there, carrying a black staff that was actually made in the 1880s and traditionally black gloves, looking rather formidable. The door of the House of Commons will be slammed in his face, and although the door is only about 75 years old, it has a very large dent in where 75 years worth of bangs have been delivered with that rod. Here we go. He's been sent to summon the Commons. This is a custom since 1647, I think it is, when, after King Charles tried to arrest some MPs, they decided to prohibit the sovereign from coming into the Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the King commands this noble House to attend His Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
And he calls it the House of Peers, not the House of Lords.
Yes. And the Sergeant at Arms is taking the Commons mace, and the Speaker, replete in his ceremonial garb, all apart from the full-bottomed wig.
And he leads the procession, not the Prime Minister, because in Parliament, the Speaker is top dog.
With his chaplain, yes. The Speaker is the most senior commoner in all the land. And you see now the Prime Minister with Kemi Badenoch.
Yes, to hear their conversation.
Yes, and this is where polite conversation is held.
And everybody's now looking, of course, to the Secretary of State for Health, West Streeting.
It's a bit of a scrum then.
Unless he's already resigned, the Secretary of State, perhaps.
I mean, you just can't imagine what going through the Prime Minister's mind right now. This should be the pinnacle of his career. This is the one moment where you would say the Prime Minister ought to be allowed to enjoy this moment. However popular or not you may be, this is...
35 pieces of legislation being brought forward.
Right. And yet, all that will be in his mind is what's coming next, what's coming this afternoon, what's coming tomorrow, how is he going to manage it? And as much as we might agree that he's not been the greatest Prime Minister and he's deeply unpopular, on a personal level, this is a very, very difficult day for him.
Very difficult moment, and several...
And he's also got to make small talk with the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, she's got to make small talk with him.
But I would imagine that he would rather be next to her than someone from his own party.
That's right.
now.
Who might be one of those who's written a letter saying clear off.
Exactly. I'm sure she will be perfectly sympathetic in offering small talk rather than trying to stick the knife in right now.
Yeah.
Of course, not all the MPs by any means will make it into the House of Lords to stand behind the bar. And I think, Michael, there are screens put up in Central Lobby around there so that other MPs can view the proceedings
Just
live.
saw West Streeting. I just caught a glimpse of West Streeting.
So he is there, and the MPs are filing through in no particular order now.
It's just a scrum.
They almost all of them will, out of respect to the summons from Black Rod, head over in that direction. And those that can't get into the House of Lords below the bar of the House will, as you say, Miriam, be watching on screens in Central Lobby. Mr. Speaker's arrived with the Sergeant at Arms, and the Speaker's Secretary, Helen Wood, is standing behind the Speaker there.
And in normal times, in normal debates, MPs are, of course, free to come and stand at the bar at any time. I remember going there to watch a few debates that I was interested in, amendments that made it through from the Commons to the Lords. And it's very interesting to go and watch those debates, but this is not a normal day.
It's not a normal day. They don't wear their parliamentary robes every day, but it is a wonderful chamber. And here the Lord Chancellor is going to give the speech to His Majesty, which is being carried in the bag that he's carrying before him. Traditionally, afterwards, he would kneel, as he's doing now, and then walk backwards down the stairs, which is rather precarious. Lord Hailsham did that, but nowadays, I think he's good for him. He has walked backwards down the stairs and then turned, and His Majesty will now deliver the speech.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, an increasingly dangerous and volatile world threatens the United Kingdom, with the conflict in the Middle East only the most recent example. Every element of the nation's energy, defence and economic security will be tested. My government will respond to this world with strength and aim to create a country that is fair for all. My ministers will take decisions that protect the energy, defence and economic security of the United Kingdom for the long term. They will defend the British values of decency, tolerance and respect for difference under our common flag, and they will harness the potential of the pride felt across this country for its communities. My government will take urgent action to tackle anti-Semitism and ensure all communities feel safe. My government believes that the United Kingdom's economic security depends on raising living standards in every part of the United Kingdom. My ministers will support measures that maintain stability and control the cost of living. They will use public investment to shape markets and attract further private investment. They will deploy the power of an active state in partnership with business and enable reforms that support higher growth and a fair deal for working people. My government believes that improved trading relations are vital for the United Kingdom's economic security, for significantly raising economic growth and for lowering prices for working people. My ministers will introduce legislation to take advantage of new trading opportunities, including a bill to strengthen ties with the European Union. My government will also support the economic security of British businesses. Legislation will be introduced to tackle late payments and to reduce the burden of unnecessary regulation through innovation. The United Kingdom's economic security depends upon world-class infrastructure. Legislation will be introduced to unlock the benefits of airport expansion, enable roads to be built at pace, including the Lower Thames Crossing, and deliver a fair deal for the north of England through Northern Powerhouse Rail. My ministers will continue to take all action necessary to safeguard the domestic production of steel. My government will also improve the United Kingdom's security by continuing to invest in the renewal of public services. My ministers will push forward with significant reforms to the police, the National Health Service, and to the criminal justice system to help them deliver services the British people expect. Legislation will be introduced to increase confidence in the security of the immigration and asylum systems. My government will improve critical infrastructure with legislation to clean up the water industry and establish Great British Railways. My government believes that the United Kingdom should be a country fair for all and a place where every child is included in the nation's highest aspirations. My ministers believe that every child deserves the chance to succeed to the best of his or her ability and not be held back due to poverty, special educational needs, or a lack of respect for vocational education. My ministers will continue to invest in apprenticeships and measures that tackle youth unemployment. They will respond to the Milburn Review and the Timms Review and continue to reform the welfare system to support both young and disabled people to flourish in work as the basis for long-term economic security. A bill will be brought forward to raise standards in schools and introduce generational reforms of the special educational needs system. My ministers will also proceed with the introduction of digital ID that will modernize how citizens interact with public services. Alongside strong public services and a strong economy, the highest standards of trust in public office are essential for the social contract and the United Kingdom's collective security. My government will introduce the Hillsborough Law to bring forward a duty of candour for public servants. My ministers will also introduce legislation to enable peerages to be removed. My government will bring forward proposals that strengthen the delivery, accountability, innovation and productivity of the civil service. These proposals will also seek to safeguard its impartiality and core values to enhance trust and confidence in the institutions of government. My government will bring forward a bill to speed up remediation for people living in homes with unsafe cladding and a draft bill to ban abusive conversion practices. In this volatile world, my government will continue to pursue foreign policy based on a calm assessment of the national interest. It will continue its unflinching support for the brave people of Ukraine who fight on the front line of freedom. My ministers will seek to improve relations with European partners as a vital step in strengthening European security. It will continue to promote long-term peace in the Middle East and the two-state solution in Israel and Palestine. My government will also uphold the United Kingdom's unbreakable commitment to NATO and our NATO allies, including through a sustained increase in defence spending. My government will seek to reinforce the long-term energy, defence and economic security of the United Kingdom as an essential component of strength on the world stage. This will include housing, which can be a source of insecurity for many people. My ministers will bring forward legislation to increase long-term investment in social housing and to reform the leasehold system, including the capping of ground rents. My government will introduce legislation to tackle the growing threat from foreign state entities and their proxies. They will respond to the horrific attack in Southport with measures to protect the British people from extreme violence and honour the victims, the injured and their families. My ministers will also introduce legislation to improve the country's defences against cybersecurity threats. My government will support our gallant armed forces and their families who make considerable personal sacrifices for the collective security and freedom of everyone in the United Kingdom. My ministers will recognise this service with an armed forces bill that improves the service justice system and establishes the Armed Forces Covenant in statute. My ministers believe that energy independence must be a long-term goal of national security and that the nation's energy security requires long-term investment and reform, as demonstrated by recent events in the Middle East. Increased production of clean British energy will help to ensure that enemies of the United Kingdom cannot attack the economic security of the British people. My ministers will therefore introduce an energy independence bill to scale up homegrown renewable energy and protect living standards for the long term. My ministers will also take forward recommendations of the nuclear regulatory review and encourage a new era of British nuclear energy generation. My government will remain a leading advocate for tackling climate change and achieving a world free from poverty. The United Kingdom will also take action to reduce humanitarian need and conflict around the world. My ministers will champion the rights of women and girls to live in a world free from violence. This will include promoting women's full economic and political participation within their societies, with agency over the decisions that impact their lives. Next year, the United Kingdom will take on the G20 presidency and host the G20 summit to drive global growth and reinforce global stability, which is essential for the prosperity of working people across the country. My government is committed to the strength and integrity of the Union of the United Kingdom and will continue to work closely with the devolved governments to deliver for citizens across the whole of the nation. Members of the House of Commons, estimates for the public services will be laid before you. My Lords and members of the House of Commons, other measures will be laid before you. I pray that the blessing of Almighty God may rest upon your councils.
Well, we've heard the King there give his speech, written, of course, by the government, setting out the programme for legislation. But I don't think the media's eyes will be on legislation today, Michael.
No, it's quite possible that there's such a challenge now that a large part of the list of legislation that Sir Keir Starmer, as Prime Minister, intends be carried out over the next 12 months won't see the light of day, at least not under Sir Keir's premiership. But as His Majesty is still in the Palace of Westminster, under the golden ceiling of the House of Lords, the peers have risen with the judges, the ambassadors, and His Majesty is processing now through the Royal Gallery to exit the House of Lords back to his carriage and back to Buckingham Palace. We can see here, there's the Duke of Norfolk at the front of the screen. Behind him, carrying the cap of maintenance, is the leader of the House of Lords and the Lord Great Chamberlain carrying the white wand of office. Then Lord Peach, Air Chief Marshal Peach, carrying the sword of state in front of His Majesty the King and Queen Camilla.
And, Sir Michael, once the King does return to Buckingham Palace, the hostage will be released.
Yes, Sir Nick Dakin has drawn the short straw, although it's not much of a short straw, to be fair. They're pretty well looked after now, the hostage.
A nice G&T at the Palace.
I think they will. They'll be offered a refreshment, Andrew, let's put it that way. And I believe they sit and watch it on television, the hostage with one of the senior palace officials waiting for the sovereign to return. It's a custom that dates from the 1640s when Parliament and the then sovereign weren't getting on very well, and they literally wanted to make sure that if the king was going to go, King Charles I was going to go to Parliament, that he actually came back again. He's going to go into the robing room and be divested of the crown and robe, underneath which he's wearing the Admiral of the Fleet's uniform of the Royal Navy. This is when one does appreciate it being a slightly cooler day, because all of that apparel is extremely heavy and warm. The Honourable Corps of Gentlemen at Arms. Now, this is a unit created by Henry VIII in 1509 to protect the sovereign in battle. Their battle axes are actually over 300 years old. And I'm talking about the real battle axes there that those soldiers
Not
were.
Rachel.
The uniform is based on a Dragoon Guards officer of the 1840s. But the MPs are filing back into the House of Commons. There's a little bit of a ceremonial in the Commons, and then it's adjourned for a few minutes before the Prime Minister will give a speech setting out his agenda for the year ahead.
And that will be quite the spectacle, because while they've been in the House of Lords, of course, the news has been broken and circulating that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is about to resign.
The challenge is on.
And trigger a leadership election as soon as tomorrow, the Times is reporting. And no doubt the rest of the day's debate will be heavy with that news.
Well, I mean, when the Prime Minister stands up on his feet to open the debate, where will Wes Streeting be? Will he be sitting on the front bench? Will he be nowhere to be seen?
Well, he's preparing to resign, we're being told. I suspect he'll defer his actual resignation till tomorrow so as not to affect the ceremonial of today. But it having already been leaked, it has already influenced how today's debate will go. And I wouldn't be surprised if he absents himself from the House of Commons during the Prime Minister's speech. Of course, it's another set-piece opportunity for Kemi Badenoch, who's quite a powerful and effective performer in the House of Commons, as we know. She's scored some key victories in the House of Commons with her skill there. And Sir Oliver Dowden just coming into the chamber now of the House of Commons, and all the MPs sort of chatting away without any ceremony. They defy all ceremony at this moment to show their fierce independence.
Indeed. And just a few minutes ago, we saw the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood. And of course, what happens next for Keir Starmer has a huge impact on them and their role as well. And of course, personally, they probably want to quite keep their jobs, but also they are in the midst of running departments, they have policies that they're implementing, and all that's now on hold until the outcome of this leadership squabble is determined.
Which will be at least 2 months.
Indeed, and for somebody like Shabana Mahmood, who appears to be doing her absolute best to get a grip on some of the Home Office's toughest problems, she's now in limbo. Can she carry on? Can she not carry on? Will she still be in post this time next week? Nobody knows.
I think the floodgates will now open, or if not today, then tomorrow. And I think other people who wish to be contestants for the leadership of the Labour Party and Prime Minister will also set off from their own starting blocks. That's most likely to happen.
I mean, the field is not going to be just him.
No. No, they won't allow it to just be him.
Well,
but what does Starmer do? Does he fight on or does he resign?
Well, he gives the impression of wishing to fight on. He apparently said, you're going to have to remove me. And we'll see whether that remains the case. But we're soon going to see the King and Queen come out of the robing room and exit. There's a new statue I might mention, which is... I think they were looking there now, that's Lord Forsyth and David Lammy and the Duke of Norfolk, looking at a new statue which is called May Flights of Angels Sing Thee to Thy Rest, which honours our late Queen, Elizabeth II.
It's not a very nice statue, I've got to say. I've seen it.
I haven't seen it in real life, Andrew, but...
it's not very good.
There's a lot of work.
Let's talk We've got Gloria Tapera in the studio with us, because it's normally PMQs today, Gloria.
It is.
But, of course, because of the King's speech. What's your reaction to this extraordinary news from Wes Streeting?
Goodness me. I think, if I'm honest, Andrew, being a Labour supporter has been quite tough since the election of this government. From the start of the freebies to the announcement of a winter fuel payment cut. This has been a challenging government. Now, that's not to say that I don't believe they have done some good things. They have, but they have sort of been drowned out by own goals, really.
Well, he's useless.
I didn't vote for him, so I always was sceptical. I don't. Whatever his talents are, they do not lend themselves to being Prime Minister. No, I wouldn't, Andrew. He's not a good communicator. No. But West Streeting is actually, which is very interesting.
The question is, for me, Gloria, that I don't doubt that he has the numbers. I think there will easily be 81 MPs who think West Streeting will do a better job than Keir Starmer, but that doesn't mean he will win a leadership election amongst the MPs, and it certainly doesn't mean he'll win a leadership election amongst the Labour members. So could this actually be a good thing for Keir Starmer if he does challenge West Streeting, if no one else comes forward? Perhaps he'll put the leadership questions to bed.
I can't imagine nobody coming forward.
But you're central. Yes. Who else will get 81, in your view?
Well, I mean, a candidate who is not West Streeting, in short.
But will they agree amongst themselves who that should be?
Yes.
Or will they split the vote?
No. I think they will agree who is our candidate to stop West Streeting. Now, today, they will be furiously trying to find somebody to resign their seat and get a by-election spot for Andy Burnham to enter that race. Remember, this was not the plan. Catherine West was freelancing by saying, oh, let's just throw the whole sort of shebang into the air. And this is where we now live with those consequences.
Well, that's it from Britain's Newsroom. What a morning. Massive thanks to Michael Ellis for superb expert commentary.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. And, of course, to Gloria. We're going to go over now to our GB News Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who is at Buckingham Palace with the latest.
Well, what a day it has been so far. While we stay on these images of the King and the Queen greeting some of those most senior members of the Lords and indeed the Commons as well, we can see, speaking there to the Speaker of the House of Lords, Michael Forsyth, if I'm not mistaken, the King there making small talk. But ultimately, has today been overshadowed by the bombshell news? Multiple reports from credible news agencies that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, is preparing to resign as soon as tomorrow to challenge the Prime Minister in a leadership contest. Does he have the names? Does he have the numbers? These are all the questions that are flooding through the heads of so many people in the Palace of Westminster, all while the King is still inside the building. Keir Starmer decided to have the King's speech today, later than normal, host this grand ceremony, this grand occasion of state with the King and the Queen and the pomp and the pageantry and everything that you'd expect to go alongside that. He decided to host that now in the wake of the local elections to try to stave off any move against this Prime Minister. That's the allegation that so many people made at the time that the Prime Minister decided this unusual timing for the state opening of Parliament. And yet, despite the Prime Minister trying to stave off any sort of move against him, it's clear that that has not worked. We've seen almost 100 Labour MPs call for the Prime Minister to go. We've seen 10 government resignations, and now we expect one cabinet resignation, perhaps, and maybe more. This is overshadowing, arguably, what the King and Queen came here today to do. And that is a high-risk strategy from the Prime Minister. The idea that you would host the state opening in such a febrile time politically, has this risked embarrassing the King and embarrassing the Queen? That is a question that I have no doubt will be asked throughout the continuation of today. But while the King and Queen leave the Palace of Westminster, get into their grand carriage of state there, there is of course much more to come, with debates in the House of Commons that will take place shortly. Do stay with us here on GB News for all the action.
I'm Charlie Peters.
I'm Miriam Cates.
Breaking news, allies of Wes Streeting have told the media that the Health Secretary is reportedly preparing to resign following a 16-minute showdown with the Prime Minister this morning.
Well, this comes as King Charles has just finished setting out the government's legislative agenda.
Well, let's cross over to Downing Street, where our deputy political editor, Tom Harwood, has the very latest. Tom, great to have your company this afternoon. What a dramatic moment this is. You're at College Green in Westminster. Tell us all.
Yes, Charlie, I was there in Downing Street throughout all of this morning. I saw Wes Streeting march up to that front door into Downing Street, and I saw him not long after march out again. I shouted many questions at the Health Secretary, none of which got a reply, but it is clear that the Health Secretary had a look of determination on his face. This was a short